Mr. Gibson, would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and DOC number.
My name is Nathaniel Gibson, DOC number 320720.
All right, Mr. Gibson, let me acknowledge we have guests that have joined us by Zoom. Zaris Fillmore, Nicole Wilson, Henderson Palmer, Scott Huffman, Michelle Pearson, Tanya Jenkins, Arthur Rhodes, Stephen Roy, and Elisa Chest. Ms. Nicole Henderson and Scott will be speaking in support. We'll call on them at the appropriate time. First, I'll read some identifying information, ask you to confirm it. Then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Roche. Your case has been assigned to him. He'll take the lead on the interview. So, Mr. Gibson, as mentioned, your DOC number is 320720. You're here seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in Orleans Parish as an habitual offender for attempted second-degree murder in September of 2007. You received a 25-year DOC sentence. Is that information correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Roche.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Gibson.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, one day, one Baker.
Morning.
Madam Chairman, fellow board members, before us this morning, we had Nathaniel W. Gibson, DOC number 320720. Mr. Gibson is here today seeking a recommendation for parole eligibility date for a 25-year sentence, which he received on September 26, 2007, attempted second-degree murder of Brian Bell on September 19, 2006, in New Orleans, Louisiana. Mr. Gibson was sentenced under Louisiana revised statute with no parole eligibility. Currently, he would have to serve 96% of his sentence before he is eligible for a good time release in September of 2030, which is approximately 7 years from now, and he would have served 24 years of a 25-year sentence. As of today, Mr. Gibson has served and been incarcerated for 17 years. He is currently 50 years old, and he was 33 years of age at the time of the offense. Mr. Gibson, tell the panel this morning exactly what happened on September 19, 2006 that resulted in you being convicted of attempted second-degree murder.
Yes, sir. On September the 19th, 2006, I was on the corner of Marlin and Willow Street. That's in Uptown, New Orleans. I was approached by a guy I knew by the name of Derek and Mr. Bell. They was trying to sell a pair of tennis shoes, some Adidas. So I asked them what size was the tennis. They told me a size 10. And I asked them, I said, well, what are y'all trying to get for the tennis? They told me $50 of cash or 6 bags of heroin. So when they told me that, I told them I had some cocaine, and if I helped them sell the tennis shoes, we could put the drugs together and get high. They both agreed. We got in the car, we rode frequent spots, different drug spots to try to sell the tennis shoes. And periodically while driving, trying to sell the tennis shoes, we periodically stopped and was using some of the cocaine that I had. Once we made it to a spot where we was able to sell the tennis, we pulled off, we went to another secluded area, we parked. They gave me the heroin. I'm in the back seat. They gave me the heroin. I'm mixing the drugs up. We are using the drugs by way of IV. I'm mixing the drugs up. When I administered the drugs in each individual syringe, I gave Derek his, I gave Mr. Bell his.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes, sir.
this version is completely different from the version that you gave us in the statement in the application. So which version is the truth?
All right, Mr. Roche, with all due respect, when I filled out the application, I didn't know to put from the leading to the actual event. I wrote straight. I went straight into the event. I didn't know.
Sir, I'm gonna stop you right there.
Sir,
These individuals said they had some clothes and shoes to sell. You want a pair of tennis, and you got in the car and they drove you to your mother's house, right?
no, they drove me to, I went by my sister's house. We rode around periodically using the cocaine. I went to my sister's house, we needed some water for the mix up the cocaine. I went to Metairie, Louisiana by my sister. We left there. Yes, sir.
Okay, and what was that on the corner of Claiborne and Napoleon?
No, they picked me up from the corner of Marlin and Willow.
Zodiac and Willow.
No, that's where the actual shooting, that's where we went and we poked. And we was, yes, sir.
Okay.
That's where we went and we poked.
Why did you shoot the victim?
As I was stating, Mr. Roche, when I was administering the heroin in each individual rig, syringe, I gave Derek his syringe, I gave Mr. Bell his syringe.
Sir, why did you shoot the victim?
We became it was an altercation concerning the amount of each individual rig had. Me being under the influence and agitated.
Sir, where were you sitting in the car?
I was in the back seat, sir.
And you shot the victim from the back seat in the head, am I correct?
Yes, I shot twice. He jumped out the car and ran, I jumped out the car and ran. Yes, correct, sir.
Okay. And then you called a medical organization to bring you to the hospital to be checked in as a drug user.
Yes, so an hour later, I used some cocaine, felt like I was in the process of ODing. I called the ambulance and they brought me to the hospital. That's correct, sir.
So we get a completely different version from the version that you gave us in the application.
As I said.
It's completely different from the police report that I read in my report. So I don't just, I can't discern what is the truth and what is fiction.
All right, Mr. Roche, when I had my phone conference, that's when I actually see, I didn't know to put what led up to us coming together. When they pulled up and said they had some tennis, Mr. Roche.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. The only opposition in this case comes from the New Orleans Police Department. As a general policy, this agency is opposed to all clemency requests, paroles, pardons, and commutation of sentence. Your family is unopposed. The victim, Brian Bell, did not respond to our communications and so there's no comment. There's no other statements of opposition in this case. Your former wife, Lysandra Gibson, is in support It will supply a place for you to live. And Mr. Cedric Mosby will supply employment in Harvey, Louisiana. What will you be doing in Harvey, Louisiana?
Excuse me, Mr. Roche, at the time that I received that I was gonna have a hearing and I needed to send in the employment in the housing, at the time, that's what I filled out. Now, my sister, I will be staying with my sister in Slidell, Louisiana, and I will be working for the TSAP program in New Orleans, Louisiana, as a facilitator for a drug treatment program.
So you're gonna live in Slidell and you're gonna
Yes,
work.
sir. Sir?
You're gonna live in Slidell and you're gonna work in New Orleans.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gibson has a low risk assessment. He has a low needs assessment. Warden Dale, Warden Bickham, I have a couple of questions. I did not get a progress report, so I need to know what custody is he in?
He's Nathaniel's a trustee here at the prison.
Okay. And how about his disciplinary conduct? How many disciplinary write-ups, and what was the last 2 or 3?
Yeah, he's only had 2. The first one was in 2008, and the last one was in September of 2014. You know, Nathaniel, like I said, he's a trustee here. Not only does he do trustee work for us here, he also volunteers and comes back in and facilitates a bunch of programs that we have here. He's a tremendous help with us and mentor here with our offenders that sometimes don't want to do the right thing here. You know, one thing that I started here recently, I guess about 4 or 5 months ago, is we call it the U program. It's for offenders that have drug problems and have test positive for drugs in here. And he pretty much facilitates that program himself. And he's always doing things for us in here. And that aspect.
Thank you, one day. I appreciate that. That goes a long ways in helping me to make a decision. What is your current work assignment? What do you do on a daily basis?
Well, on a daily basis, Monday and Tuesday, I facilitate the transitional program. That's the program Warden Day spoke of with the guys in the cell block who's been caught with contraband or dirty urine. I facilitate that program, and on Wednesdays, I'm out working in the housing area of the prison.
Okay. And what organizational involvement do you have?
But here at Rayburn, I'm part of the JC's community.
Okay. Let's go over some of the programs that you completed in 17 years of incarceration.
All right. Firstly, I've completed the faith-based program. I'm sorry.
The extra verbiage in which you think would help you might do you some harm. So when I ask you a question, you answer that question, let me go on with the next question, okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Program that you completed in 17 years of incarceration, Living in Balance in 2014, 12-step program. You've been involved with Crimeaholics, multiple certificates. You completed critical thinking, Malachi Dads. You are a group leader in Malachi Dads. And you are a mentor in the Let's Move program. Tell us about the Let's Move program.
Well, the Let's Move program is actually it targets the young youth here, the young men here. My son, I have an older son that's here. He's part of the Let's Move as well. So I pretty much get with them, love on them emotionally, and let them know that they do have a purpose, they do have a future. Not just try to direct them the right way, using what I've been through, what I've overcame, and how I overcame.
Thank you. You also completed victim awareness, making peace with the past, and peer education program. And you've completed tons and tons of faith-based programs. Let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yes, sir.
You have all three.
Yes, sir.
You've been very good. It's been bad, and some it's just plain ugly. Let's look at the bad first. Your first arrest was at the age of 14. You had 5 or 6 juvenile arrests between 1987 and 1990. You were on juvenile probation twice, and you were under house arrest as a juvenile on 1 occasion. You had a very extensive criminal background as a juvenile. As an adult, you've been convicted of 4 felonies. You're a 4th felony offender with 17 arrests. Along with those 4 felony convictions, you have multiple misdemeanor convictions. Let's look at the ugly. It is ugly. You have a terrible supervision history. You've been revoked on 6 or 7 occasions. You absconded supervision in 1998, again in 2005. And you've been incarcerated since 2006. You were released on full term from supervision in January 2006. Then 8 months later, you were back in jail for attempted 2nd-degree murder. Is everything I just said true?
Yes, sir.
Now let's talk about your drug and alcohol addiction. At what age did you start using drugs?
16.
And what was your first drug?
Cocaine, powder cocaine.
So you started on cocaine.
Yes, sir.
You skipped marijuana and just went straight to cocaine.
Yes, sir.
And did you use anything other than cocaine?
But by the age of 17, I used heroin.
And how long did this abuse of drugs go on?
Periodically, throughout the time you stated that I was my first conviction till the time that I've caught this offense.
So you were a drug addict using illegal drugs until 2006.
Yes, sir.
When's the last time you used illegal drugs?
206.
You've never, and you're under oath, you've never used illegal drugs while incarcerated.
No, sir. No, sir.
Have you ever abused alcohol?
No, sir.
So tell me what you've done in the last 17 years to treat your addiction to cocaine.
Well, first thing first, Mr. Roach, I gave my life wholeheartedly to Jesus Christ. I'm a minister here at Rayburn. That was the first thing first, because I knew in order for me to change, I would have to change within. So I gave my life to Jesus Christ. I've obtained my GED. I've completed faith-based, Malachi Dad, Celebrate Recovery. I'm now a facilitator, Living in Balance, 12-step, victim awareness. I'm now a facilitator. Part of the JCs, I mentor to the young youth that come in off the streets. They have tours that come through. I mentor to them. The transition program, the youth program, pre-release. I'm doing, the good, the bad, the good and the bad, Mr. Roche, I look back hindsight. I was bound to sin. I was controlled by addiction. The ripple effect, I have an older son here. Since I've been incarcerated, my sister, my mother, my dad. So what I do every day is try my best to help a young man who's soon to be going home so he wouldn't make the mistake, so he wouldn't have a good and a bad. All my life, I've tried to sedate whatever I was going through. I've learned triggers. I understand what triggers are now. My every day, I put my best foot forward to try to be the best version of self. The best version of self.
Mr. Gibson, I understand, and I believe every word is from the bottom of your heart, and I do understand. Okay, so if and when you're released, what would be your ongoing sobriety plan on the outside?
As I stated, I will be a facilitator at TSAP program. I have another guy that's willing to hire me. He have outreach dealing with youth. So if I'm facilitating substance abuse groups, just as well as I'm facilitating, I'm being fed as well.
Thank you. So before I get to the good, I'd like to hear from Warden Day and Warden Vicker.
Yes, as I said earlier, Mr. Roche, I mean, you know, unfortunately for Nathaniel being here, he has been an asset to RCC and helping us to try to facilitate and mentor some of our offenders in here that choose not to do right. So, you know, I can't speak for his past, but in here, he does the right thing day in and day out with them. So I can't say enough about Nathaniel and the what he leads here and the way he carries himself here. Always respectful to employees and does what he's supposed to on the other end, helping facilitate and getting people up to par.
Thank you, Warden Day. Anything you want to add, Warden Vicker?
Yes, sir. I'd reiterate everything Warden Day said. Nathaniel's job when he's not facilitating is a housing orderly. He works around my family. I have total confidence in his ability to be able to stay straight when he's out of here. I would not have a problem with him being my neighbor.
Thank you, Warden Vicker. Now for the good. Mr. Gibson, you're 50 years old. Hopefully, you've matured to the point where you will make good decisions. You've been incarcerated for 17 years. You've got to be tired. You got to be to the point where you're frustrated about being incarcerated and look forward to doing what's right. And well, if not rehabilitated, well on the way to rehabilitation. You have a low risk assessment. You have a low needs assessment. You earned a GED in 2008. You have tons of programs. And you've been a mentor and a group leader in most of these programs. You have family support. You have a good transition plan, even though it's not the one I saw, but you have a good transition plan. And positive remarks from both Warden Day and Warden Bicker. Madam Chairman, I do have a recommendation in this case, and I will share it with my fellow board members at the conclusion of this interview.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. We'll hear from the folks that want to speak in support. First, Ms. Nicole Wilson.
Sure, Nicole Wilson with TSAP. So I am going to be his personal transitional person, but I want to yield my turn to Mr. Arthur Rhodes. If Mr. Arthur is on the call, can he go ahead and speak, please?
He's not on.
Okay, I don't know, maybe it's Mr. Arthur is not there. So again, Nicole Wilson with Total Sentencing Alternative Programs here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Organization started by someone who was sentenced to death row here in the state of Louisiana by the name of Sharif Kuzan. I am his program assistant. And so we are honored to have Nathaniel be a part of our staff and team. Again, I will be his personal transitional person. And so I know it sounded like a little gap in between with him working in New Orleans and living in Slidell, but our program director, Mr. Sharif Kuzan, has alluded to saying that he will make sure that Nathaniel gets to work each and every day because he lives in Slidell. And so we understand the social ills that plague our community. And so we are excited again to have him to be a part of this process with us and be a part of our team. And welcome home. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Henderson Palmer. You're still on mute. He's on.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right, and yes, my name is Henderson Palmer, and just a good friend of Mr. Nathaniel. I work with him a lot as I go back inside the prison at Rayburn and help facilitate a lot of the classes. And just down through the years, I've seen a lot of growth and maturity in Mr. Nathaniel. But as far as providing he's get a commutation of sentence or a pardon or parole, the opportunities that we have set for him from on the outside is that I have a landscaping company that I own. If things don't work out with him at TSAP, I'm right here on the North Shore in Mandeville, and we have a full-fledged landscaping company that we would love to hire him, providing that he, gets parole or a pardon. I'm hoping that he can come out so he can, because, I need a lot of help even with the landscaping. He can become a manager and also become a business partner, as me and him talked about, if things don't work out at TSAP. But most importantly, I have a nonprofit. It's called Heinz Feet Ministries. And what we do, I was formerly incarcerated. I was at Rayburn, and I have a lot of opportunities to go back to Rayburn. But on the outside, I'm just kind of continuing the reentry program that I once was a part of while I was incarcerated at Rayburn. And what we do, those same programs that Nathaniel is involved in now is some of the programs that we're putting forth on the outside, and hopefully he can help facilitate some of those same groups once he's released from prison. There's a lot of churches that I'm connected with that's willing to support him. He have my full support, even if it means helping him pay parole fees. If it's help, I would like to help him get a driver's license, transportation. If he, I know he's going to need transportation, so we want to help him out with that. And any other restitution that he might have to pay or do, we want to, walk with him, even in those processes, whatever that looks like, as far as the board, whatever stipulations you guys may have. But most importantly, I just want to hold Nathaniel accountable. Once he gets released, I just want to be able to be part of his accountability team as well as him holding me accountable, just making sure that, he pays his fees. He, stay involved in community outreach programs, just as how he's involved in it now. It's just going to be a continuation of it. We have a lot of stuff with Heinz Feet Ministry that he can plug into, but we just want to take some baby steps with him and not trying to get him overwhelmed, because I know he have a lot of value in what he's capable of doing. So we just want to take some baby steps and let him kind of get involved as he's making his transition on the outside, and not to get him too overwhelmed in ministry stuff. But we just want to hold him accountable. We're going to hold him accountable in paying his fees, like I said, hold him accountable and keeping, his hands to the plow on doing good things for the community, outreach programs, being a good dad. We want to hold him accountable to that part, and just being a good man, a good husband to one wife, a good community person.
Yes,
And
sir.
and I just want to ask the board if that you guys can find favor in Mr. Nathaniel and grant him a parole today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Scott Huffman, please.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for letting me speak today. I'm Scott Huffman. I've been knowing Mr. Gibson probably for 14 years now. I met him whenever I was at Rayburn Correctional Center. I was there for about 4 years, and I was young when I went in, and I was still pretty wild. And Mr. Gibson is one of the guys that I used to look up to. He walked around every day with a smile on his face, even before the mentorship program that I think he's currently involved with was spearheaded. He was doing that on his own inside the dormitories and on the compound, just going to the yards, taking pictures, talking to the young men, myself included. I could always count on him being in church. And he just always brought a smile to everybody's face. He's very humble. He gets up every day. He does his job. He doesn't involve himself in the foolishness. He's been involved in multiple programs. Specifically, when I was in Malachi Dad's, he was there and he was inspirational in that. I can assure you 100% that not only are the organizations that have been mentioned on today's call going to support him, but there's a couple handfuls of other organizations that are going to make sure that he has a smooth transition. I know Vladimir sees he's watching today, but he wanted me to also let you guys know that he would be involved in Mr. Gibson's release. And I know a bunch of other people that are watching today are also sharing the same sentiments. I also own a construction company, and I do podcast work as well. And I've talked to Mr. Gibson on my trips back to Rayburn about getting him involved in that and sharing his story. And bringing on other formerly incarcerated people to share their stories. But I just want to share today that, that Mr. Nathaniel has a humble spirit, and I have no doubt in my heart that once he's released, he's going to be a positive impact, not only to his family and the people that he's mentioned today, but also a lot of young people out there that he can relate to, sharing his strength, experience, and hope. And to lead them down a different path. And I think he's been very clear over the past 17 years about what his wishes are upon his release and what he wants to give back to the community. And I just think it speaks volumes of him. And I appreciate you letting me talk today. And I would just ask for a favorable decision.
All right. Well, thank you for your remarks. I think that finishes out everybody who wants to speak on your behalf, Mr. Gibson. So is there a statement you'd like to make before we vote?
I'd just like to say to the honorable judge, to the honorable board members, is that I'm not ready to go home. I'm prepared. I'm prepared to go home. I'm prepared to get out there, put my foot to the plow, put my hand to the plow, be a mentor to a fatherless child, a troubled teen. I'm prepared to be a father, a grandfather. I'm prepared to be a productive citizen, if granted.
We are prepared to vote. Mr. Roche will be voting first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Gibson. I very rarely get recommendations from one day and Warden Bickham like I got today. For Warden Bickham to say that you work closely with his family, in close proximity, and he wouldn't mind having you as a neighbor speaks volumes. I've seen very few offenders that had 3 or 4 reentry programs speak up. Total community action in New Orleans with Mr. Rhodes, Stephanie Mills with Catholic Charity, Division A of Criminal Court in the New Orleans Reentry Program sent in their support. So you had a tremendous amount of support. So based upon positive remarks by Warden Day, Warden Bickham, excellent programs, a good transition plan, and a good disciplinary conduct, my recommendation is to grant, and I'm gonna leave the 25-year sentence in place, but my recommendation is for parole eligibility after serving 70% of your sentence. And years at 17 and a half years, and you already served over 17 years. Good luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Marabella.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My vote would be the same for the same reasons.
Mr. Freeman.
I gotta tell you now, point blank, when I looked at your supervision history, my vote was 100% no. I'm gonna tell you, and I'm still concerned, because you young man, 50 years old, you young. And it kind of bothers me, you know, I'm worried about what's gonna happen, but I'm like Mr. Rozier, I've never heard those 2 wardens speak up for someone as much as they spoke up for you. So I'm gonna go along with Mr. Rozier's recommendation.
Mrs. Jackson.
Mr. Gibson, you've done outstanding work and you are to be commended for that. My vote would be to recommend a commutation to immediate parole eligibility. So that's my vote.
Okay, and Mr. Gibson, I do agree. You've done the work. Your record's not that great, and I was concerned when I looked at it, but listening to you, listening to the wardens, I think you're deserving. So my vote is the same. Commutation after having served 70%. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you.
Warden Day, that concludes our business with your facility. Thanks for helping out. We'll sign off. It's 10:52.